Bad Things Can Get is a 2025 horror thriller novel by Darcy Coates. Well, I mentioned in my small horrors recommendation that I haven't actually read any of Darcy Coates' novels, only her short stories and maybe a novella. I think there was one included in Ghost Camera along with a handful of other short stories, but really I've done the short stories. So when her most recent release came out on Libby, I went ahead and checked it out, or rather I got into a ridiculously long line and waited until it was finally available for download. And oh baby, did I enjoy me this book! It was actually pretty good. Like, I was very impressed with it. We follow Ruth, a survivor of a Heaven's Gate level style cult that drank the metaphorical Kool-Aid 20 years ago, resulting in their violent and disturbing deaths. Ruth was supposed to die too, but she managed to escape and was rescued by the police. Incidentally, she has become a notorious figure for those who follow the case. She's the girl who has survived, the special child who had visions of the future, allegedly, and also allegedly giggled while being let off by the cops. And because of a very aggressive advocate, Ruth's identity has been hidden from the world for 20 years. So when she and her boyfriend Zach and two of his friends head off to a remote island after winning tickets for a popular influencer's special competition, Ruth is instantly on edge. The 25th anniversary of the event is approaching, and being in front of the cameras and in proximity of celebrity is a bad combination for keeping a low profile, especially considering that the island she's currently on was itself the home of a completely different cult that died off years ago. Later on that night, Ruth sees a badly injured girl running through the jungle, and we get our first confirmation that things are really about to go off the rails. So, the first thing I have to praise about this novel was the mystery element. I wasn't really sure where we were going with it initially. Is Ruth's background with the cult going to be majorly related to the plot, or is it simply something that informs her character development and mindset? Is this seemingly innocent but still a bit dangerous competition gearing up to turn into some sort of battle royale Hunger Games style fight to the death? Is the cult that died on the island years ago somehow related to Ruth's? 99% of these plot points were resolved eventually. One wasn't, it kind of fell a little flat for me, but I can't really say which one it was without giving the whole thing away and spoiling the mystery. But that was only the one thing. Every other mystery and plot point was eventually resolved over the course of the book, and this was done in a way that I felt was really satisfying. We start off with all these different things and progressively build up to a big, exciting fallout towards the end. There were a few curveballs throughout the book regarding certain characters and their motivations that I felt were pulled off really well too. Altogether, the book's plot seemed to be very nicely organized, tied together beautifully in the end. The horror was very nicely paced. I feel the need to confess that I have a love of horror media where influencers get axed. Call it catharsis after seeing how absolutely insufferable some of them are. But How Bad Things Can Get actually did it in a far less over-the-top way than some other books I've read. The influencers actually came off as fairly realistic people rather than caricatures, something that was particularly effective given that the influencer at the heart of this event was pretty familiar. The guy is pretty transparently a Mr. Beast XP, which I found really funny. It wasn't a one-for-one comparison, but the similarities in personality and shtick were definitely there. Much like the other influencers, it wasn't a super exaggerated depiction, which was nice. Like, again, sometimes you read books that have characters low or high key based on real-life people, and they become ridiculous caricatures of the people they're based on, but that wasn't really the case here, and I like that. I also have to say that while this book has its share of cannon fodder characters who appear just to die, the author did throw some more curveballs in the end in regards to who survived and who died. There were a handful of characters that I kind of assumed might be safe based on their role in the story, and some of them ended up dead. Then there were a few characters that were set up to be cannon fodder, and they managed to survive, so kudos to Darcy Coates for subverting my expectations on that end. Something else I liked was the ambiguity about supernatural influence. I mentioned before that Ruth was prized by her cult as a child for having visions of the future. She refers to them as sightings. And for most of the book, there was some decent question as to whether or not Ruth is actually having visions or if it's just hallucinations or nightmares, and how it influences the way the story plays out in the end. So yeah, overall, I was pretty impressed with my first foray into a Darcy Coates novel. It was well-paced, told a good, cohesive horror story with great tension and characters I actually cared about for the most part. Thought it was a solid horror book, and I definitely recommend to anyone who's into this sort of thing.